Hello and welcome to this Dr. Ross Maths key skill video on calculating a further bound for a given formula involving multiple arithmetic operations. So let's look at this. A is equal to b over c plus d, and we're given different values for b, c and d, which is some value rounded to a given number of significant figures or decimal places. So we don't know what b is, but we know that when rounded to one significant figure, it is 3, for example. Now we explored this in a previous video where we might have, say, a equals b over c, and we want to say find the upper bound of a or the lower bound of a. It's just a bit hard here because we've got more than one operation. So let's think about a equals b over c plus d, and we want the upper bound of a. So I'm going to put ub for upper bound. Now how do we make a as big as possible? Well, we'd want to start with a big number and divide by a small number. That would get the biggest possible value. So we want the upper bound for b. So we start with a big number and then we want to divide as small a number as possible to keep a big. So we want c plus d to be as small as possible. Now if we're adding two things and we want them to be as small as possible, then we make each of c and d as small as possible. So we're going to use the lower bound for c and the lower bound for d. And I think it's helpful to write out the formula again, but putting ub for upper bound or lb for lower bound on each of the variables. So now we need to work out what is the upper bound of b, what's the lower bound of c, etc. Now I'm going to do this quickly because we explore how to find upper and lower bounds in other videos, but the upper bound of b is just going to be, well, if you just stick a 0.5 on the end, it's going to be 3.5. We want the lower bound of c. Now remember, the trick to get the lower bound, if you're rounding to a certain number of decimal places, is you reduce the last digit by 1 and shove a 5 on the end. And then the lower bound of d, again, reduce the last digit by 1, shove a 5 on the end. And then we're just going to plug all these numbers into our sort of lower bound, upper bound formula. So we're going to do the upper bound of b, which is 3.5, over the lower bound of c, 0.485, plus the lower bound of d, 0.565, and that gives you 3.33333333. So it's basically 10 over 3, 3 1/3, and we want the answer to 3 decimal places, so in fact it is 3.333 to 3 decimal places. And that's the final answer.